In this tutorial, you're going to learn the 5 fundamental steps to scoliosis treatment. Now, this is a replay of a tutorial that I did a while ago, so this tutorial is in my archive, but what I've decided to do is bring it back to the front of the archive, because what's going to happen after it in the next 2 posture tutorials is we're going to be putting this information into practice. So I wanted to do this one first to get the information fresh in your mind, so that when you come on to the next 2 tutorials, you'll have that fresh in your mind so you can then go along and put it in practice. So the next 2 will be a follow-along style tutorial where you'll be following along with me, and I'll be explaining these 5 fundamentals and putting them into practice. If you're watching these on the day of the release, obviously the next 2 tutorials won't be available just yet, so you'll have to come back to the channel when they are released. However, if you are watching this at a different time, and what I will do is put the links to the following 2 videos in the description below. So if you are wanting to overcome scoliosis or certainly improve it, then please do keep a check not only on this video but on my channel for when I release the next 2 parts to this let's just say like mini tutorial series. So what we'll do now is we'll get straight to the tutorial where you can learn the anatomy and then follow on from that the follow along tutorials. Hello and welcome, it's Chris from Christopher Hall Training, and welcome to this week's tutorial where we're talking about 5 fundamental steps in scoliosis treatment. Now, in the past I have talked about exercises and stretches that can help scoliosis, how we can support the spine, how we can strengthen the core, which is going to help what we're talking about today. This is slightly different because this underlies the exercises and the stretches that I've been talking about, and I'm going to be adding more to this as the weeks go by as well. But what it comes down to is essentially this first principle here. So actively elongate the trunk. So if we come to this diagram here, which I'm going to explain further, you can see you've got mild scoliotic posture here. Now, what we want to be actively doing whilst we're doing exercises, stretches, and in everyday movement, as I've explained in past videos, is we want to be thinking about how can we actively engage and how can we actively elongate the trunk and the spine to bring that posture into what we would describe more as a healthy or normal posture. So we're not specifically doing exercises and stretches, we're just thinking about how can we get ourselves from this scoliotic posture into this straight normal posture, if you want to call it that. And so what we have to actively engage in is elongating the trunk and the spine. The remainder of this video we're going to be focusing on these 4 principles, or these 4 fundamentals down here. But before we get into that, I just quickly want to describe these diagrams that are on the right hand side here. Now, we're using these diagrams from the Schroth method, and what we are going to be focusing on are these 2 diagrams here mainly. And what they are there to represent is the spine and the pelvis are represented in these 3 blocks here, sorry. So you've got the pelvis and lower back, you've got the lower back to mid back, and you've got the upper back and neck here. So what we are looking at is these 3 blocks to be stacked normally to have that healthy posture. Now, what we find in a scoliotic posture is deviations through these 3 segments. So you can see here the lower and the upper are slightly protruding out to the left, and then you've got this middle section slightly protruding out to the right, creating this scoliotic posture through here. Now, what we've got to understand is that we're not just going to be viewing this from back or front. We're also going to be viewing this from the side, but also from the top as well. And I'm going to be, in a sense, sort of drawing these diagrams as I go along for the side view and the top view, because that's what these points here represent. So point number 2, or fundamental number 2, is bring weight onto your heels. So what you might find is that you're standing on or you're putting your weight mainly through your toes. So we first of all want to be bringing the weight back onto the heels. The third point is then a level pelvis back to front. So if we view this from the side, and if I take this block down the bottom here and draw it up here, what we might find is that instead of it being level, it's more sort of pointing from top to bottom. So instead of it being in this more level position, and then you've got the spine sort of coming up here, what you've got is the pelvis is more tilted forwards. Now, what this would encourage would be a more lordotic posture, so an extended or a hyperextended lumbar spine, because the pelvis is dropping down. So what we want to be able to do is pull the pelvis, or the back of the pelvis, down and the front of the pelvis up. What that will do, that will soften the curve at the lumbar spine, and it will also level the pelvis to bring it more into this position. So we'll soften the curve at the lumbar spine, and we'll bring this pelvis more into, let's just say, a neutral position. So first of all, we want to bring the weight onto the heels, and then we want to actively level the pelvis from back to front. So we are actively, in a sense, flattening the lumbar curve, lifting the front of the pelvis up, and dropping the back of the pelvis down. So that's point number 3. When we come on to point number 4, it's level the hips and the shoulders from right to left. So this brings me onto this diagram here. So what we're trying to actively engage, so at the moment you've got this bottom section shifting in this direction as I've described, and you've also got the top segment is being shifted out in the same way. So what we want to be doing is the opposite to that. Is we want to be bringing this middle section back, and the upper and lower sections back into the right. So we are then again bringing ourselves back into this posture here. So first of all, you're actively engaging and just standing up taller. The second thing, you're bringing your weight onto your heels. The third thing is you're lifting the front of your pelvis and dropping the back of your pelvis, flattening that lumbar curve. So this is point number 3. Point number 4 is you're shifting your shoulders and hips back to the right, if that's the way your spine curves. I have to make that point. You have to do this to your spinal curve. So where I'm describing these different points, you might find that your spinal curve goes the opposite way. So you then have to do the opposite to what I'm saying, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of sort of mental capacity and mental thought that goes into this, but you have to use these principles in a sense to your spine. I'm describing it in this one way. If your spine curves this way, then I'm describing it in a sense for your spine. But if your spine goes the other way, then you have to kind of reverse what I'm saying. So the fifth thing is you have to level your pelvis diagonally. Now what that means is, if you look at the top view, so if I draw a diagram here, so you'll have the top view will look something like that in a healthy spine. It'll all be lined up, and it will be sort of flat from sort of front to back, and it will, in a sense, it will look normal. But if we come on to this one, what you might find, so you've got the head here. Now I'm going to go all the way down to segment 1, which is this one here. So this is the one I'm going to be drawing. What you might find is that it's slightly rotated from left to right. Now I'm exaggerating this curve, but this is just for sort of demonstration purposes. So what we have to do is we have to bring this left side forward and this right side back. Now we would be in this example, if I'm just drawing the eyes on, we are looking forward here. So this is the way we are looking. So this is the way we are facing. But what we've got is that first segment, the pelvis and the lower back, is twisted. So we have to bring the left side forward and the right side back. So this is a lot to think about. This isn't going to be something that you'll just be able to spring into position. This is something that you have to actively engage in point by point. So go through it, point 1 all the way through to point 5. So I'll recap those points now. So first of all is actively engage and elongate the trunk and the spine. So in a sense, stand up taller. Point number 2 is to bring your weight onto your heels. So when you're standing, bring your weight onto your heels. But also, don't just bring it onto your heels so you're, in a sense, lifting your toes up. Keep the toes and the balls of the feet on the floor, but bring the weight more onto your heels. Then, level your pelvis from front to back. So we're talking about this lordotic posture here in diagram number 3. When we're talking about number 4, this was bringing your hips and shoulders into line from right to left or left to right. And then finally, number 5, which was this diagram down here, which is level the pelvis diagonally. So if you've got a rotation of the pelvis from left to right, you bring the left forward and the right back, or if it's the other way around, you obviously bring the right forward and the left back. So what we have to be focusing on is just in everyday life, standing, seated, we have to be thinking not only about point number 1, but points through 2 and 4 as well. So it's very much focusing on, are we putting our spine into the position that it should be in? That's the easiest way I can describe it, but those 5 points are in a sense how you get it there. So hopefully you found this whiteboard helpful. Hopefully you found the diagrams to be to explain it enough. If you do have a question, pop a comment below. If you've found it interesting, pop a comment below about what you found most interesting. If you found this video useful, put a thumbs up for it. If you found this video useful as well, please subscribe to the channel. Click the little bell button so you'll get notified for the next video. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Christopher Hole Training. I will speak to you in the next video.